Welcome back to SuperString. Today I will show you a 2012 science fiction parody film named Robot and Frank. Spoilers ahead. Keep an eye out and fare thee well. In the near future, in Cold Spring, New York, ex-convict Frank Weld lives alone in the forced attempt to disregard the reality he experiences mental decay and dementia, causing him to have bewilderment and cognitive decline. This causes him to do things like saying he's been at a lodging that truly shut quite a while back, convictions his child is still in school, or trying to deny his own home in the late evening. He additionally resides like a pig that never cleans and won't open the curtains to permit daylight into his home. The one thing he goes out for is going to the library, of which he's the main client left as a result of the decline of print media, therefore it will be before long be changed into a public venue. Straight to the point, not just likes going there to get more books, however, he additionally enjoys seeing the bookkeeper Jennifer, who he has eyes for. After each library run, he comes by the Excellence shop nearby and takes an unexpected surprise for his assortment. One evening, he's visited by his child hunter, who gets there each end of the week, cutting the time he enjoys with his own family for it. He's truly stressed over his father's condition, which is more regrettable each time he converses with him, and he likewise needs to invest more energy with his own youngsters. However, since Frank won't go to a nursing home, Hunter has instead presented to him a robot modified to be a head servant and a therapeutic consideration supplier. Forthright believes nothing should do with it either, in any event, saying his better half won't approve of it, making Hunter remind him he's been separated for a considerable length of time and his mother doesn't live there any longer. Tracker will not pay attention to any reasons. The robot stays, or he will send Frank to a memory community, since he doesn't maintain that his father's passing should be his shortcoming. Incapable to find a method for turning the robot off, Frank permits it to do the tasks to get it away from him. The robot not just cleans the whole house, it likewise goes shopping for food and prepares quality suppers. It likewise gets Frank up very promptly in the morning, claiming they need to lay out a routine to assist with keeping him orientated among this and the quality suppers. Frank gets extremely irritated by the robot, particularly when it requests that he start a nursery, saying he wants a task to keep his mind animated. The nursery turns out to be dealt with by just a robot, yet Frank winds up leisurely accepting the robot into his life in other ways. It prepares his dinners, trims his hair, keeps his home clean, and basically gives him organization. They go for climbs together, which Frank loves, yet the robot rapidly learns it can get Frank to get things done to support his well-being in the event that it says that in the event that he doesn't, it'll call Hunter to take him to the memory place, or that it will be sent back to the distribution center and have his memory cleaned for failing at saving his life. There's one thing he doesn't allow the robot to do, however, and that is entering the library with him. While it holds up outside and gets bothered by kids, Frank visits Jennifer, just to find her chatting to a youngster called Jake Finn, a rich youthful engineer at the top of the library redesign project that couldn't want anything more than to talk more to Frank in the future, since he survived the time where print media was the main choice, and he finds that fascinating. However, until further notice, he should leave since he's rather occupied, and whenever he's gone, Jennifer shows him the progressions they're doing to the library. Every one of the little arbitrary books will be reused, yet there are a couple of exceptional releases of works of art like Don Quixote that will be removed for preservation. Jennifer wants to save them for herself. Whenever he leaves the library, Frank finds the robot getting bothered by kids, and in the wake of sending them away, he tells it that in the event that somebody doesn't leave after it asks them to, then it ought to say fall to pieces arrangement initialized and begin counting down from 10 to frighten them away. Next they go to the Magnificence shop, which Frank calls Harry's, similar to the eatery that used to be in its place. He attempts to take a little figurine, however he's driven away from it behind when the shopwoman nearly gets him in the demonstration. Returning nonetheless, he finds out the robot has taken the figurine for him. It knows the definition of terms like stealing and shoplifting, yet it has pretty much no clue of ethics, and the law hasn't been customized into it either. Straightforward finds himself truly liking this side of the robot and chooses to show it how to pick locks, calling it the venture that can keep him invigorated instead of the nursery. This gives him a thought, thus Frank disrupts his own guideline and brings the robot into the library with him so it can realize where everything, particularly the old-fashioned books, is found. They go over Jennifer, who educates them concerning an incoming pledge drive party and requests that Frank be her in addition to one, which Frank acknowledges. Thereafter, he and the robot look at the security framework outside the library, and Frank finally concedes he needs to come around evening time and take the old duplicate of Don Quixote. The robot doesn't think it's smart in light of the fact that respecting Frank's timetable is essential to keep him orientated, yet Frank convinces it to help him by pointing out how animated this new undertaking is keeping him. He hasn't felt this invigorated in some time. Tracker calls him one evening to scold his father for having complained about the robot to his sister, who is currently harassing him to take the robot back. Blunt lets him know he's altered his perspective and needs to keep it, surprising Hunter when he advises him to invest more energy with his children. After they hang up, Frank concerns the robot has been telling him about their mystery project. However, the robot guarantees building trust by respecting protection is essential for his medical care program. Later in the evening, they effectively break into the library on account of Frank's long-lasting experience as a feline criminal. The robot takes Don Quixote and tells Frank they need to leave when it sees he's starting to get disorientated and asks peculiar inquiries like for what reason it's wearing a space protective cap. The pair leaves the library securely, however Frank fails to remember his glasses on the table. Whenever they make it home, Frank is so siphoned about their prosperity that he would rather not head to sleep yet, and this is taking its cost for him. He begins talking to the robot, believing it is his child, showing lament over missing such a large amount his life in jail, that he was unable to see him grow up and lacked the ability to remember him whenever he first saw him after he was delivered. The following morning, Frank gets a call from his little girl Madison, who is away out traveling to Turkmenistan. She's learned through Hunter that Frank is keeping the robot and accepts her brother is abandoning him with a machine, and Frank can't resist the urge to answer Hunter is essentially doing something. Madison apologizes for not being near and reminds him traveling is how she makes ends meet. Whenever sun sets, Frank and the robot attend the pledge drive party determined to gift the Don Quixote to Jennifer, however they drop that plan when she alludes to the burglary as something awful. While Jennifer is mingling with the contributors, Frank can't resist the urge to see Jake is talking to Sheriff Rawlings while glancing at him. Jake chooses to move toward him then to inquire as to whether he's at any point been to jail and in the event that he wears reading glasses prior to asking him not to come around any longer. At the point when Jennifer finds him thereafter, Frank has turned into somewhat neurotic and begins to contemplate whether this entire arrangement isn't simply a trick in light of the fact that these givers are excessively stacked. The following day, Frank makes the robot show him his memory of the party, getting envious that the robot can review things with such ease. Noticing all the costly adornments the visitors were wearing, he begins planning their next work, which the robot fights again. Straight to the point reminds him this kind of movement is stimulating him more than the stupid nursery and guarantees he'll go all around the possible dangers to commit an error-resistant work. The robot acknowledges Frank doing just the casing as exploration to keep him dynamic. The team begins going to Jake's home to watch it from a far distance and realize every one of the insights regarding Jake's and his significant other's day-to-day routine and the house's security frameworks. While watching, they discuss an assortment of subjects and Frank beginnings wondering the amount of what they do is the robot's decision and not simply programming. The robot points out it's all programming, which Frank doesn't accept on account of the time it had communicated not wanting its memory getting eradicated. Incredibly, the robot lets it be known simply express that to pressure Frank, not on the grounds that it has any real wishes of his own. It is very mindful of the reality it isn't alive, and this makes Frank self-conscious. One evening, while at the same time working on his arrangements, Jennifer thumps on the entryway, saying she's come over for dinner. Forthcoming had totally overlooked it, however, instead of admitting it, he tells her he's actually getting prepared and to return later. Jennifer leaves looking rather harmed in the wake of putting down the pie she's welcomed on the yard. The following day, Frank wraps up Don Quixote and goes to the library fully intent on gifting it to her, however he hears the advanced music coming from the building and adjusts his perspective. Both of them continue to watch Jake over time until one day, their planning and scheming is interrupted when Madison appears of no place at the house. She's been thinking a ton about how she hasn't been there for Frank, so she's come to save him from the robot, or so she asserts. Straightforward attempts to tell her he enjoys the robot, yet she overlooks him and utilizations the secret key she got from Hunter to close it down. Regardless of whether he has his girl's organization currently, Frank misses the robot and the manner in which it really focused on him, which Madison doesn't begin to coordinate. As a method of descent, he begins behaving like a pig again, transforming the house once more into a dump in only one day. Yet, when he gets up one morning, he finds each room is perfectly spotless, and Madison says she pulled a dusk till dawn affair to accomplish it. Honest doesn't trust her and gets down on her pietism for having utilized the robot, and subsequent to explaining how he wants it since it's his companion, she yields and acknowledges to turn it on again, as long as he guarantees they will not totally rely upon it to live. Later in the evening, Frank explains his arrangement to take the precious stones from Jake's home to the robot, who lets it out's very great yet stresses over Frank's well-being, so it consents to do it, provided that Frank acknowledges a new eating routine from here on out. At Jake's, they trusted the couple will leave, then go into the house through an entryway not covered by the caution framework, since Frank knows by experience all security frameworks have a blind spot. Then the robot savage powers the protected, a task that generally would take a hoodlum weeks, yet a robot can do in minutes. The main issue they go over is the couple returning sooner than anticipated when they are going to leave the region, however they simply have to hang tight for them to get occupied before effectively sneaking out. The following day, while Frank and Madison are sunbathing and sharing a drink, the robot permits two visitors to go into the house. Jake and Rawlings. Jake is certain Frank was the one to take the book and presently his jewels and maintains that Rawlings should capture him, yet the sheriff gets along until further notice and says he doesn't think Frank might have pulled it at his age, so he believes him should be their specialist. Frank kicks them both out without considering the proposition. Whenever the opportunity arrives for Madison to return to his work, Frank gifts her a couple of jewel earrings as a gift to her objective, swearing it's extra from the past times and not Jake's. She leaves in the wake of admitting she was off base about the robot, and as Frank watches her drive away, he sees a van stop nearby. He's being watched. Stressed over getting captured, he surges back inside and starts burning all the proof, however won't erase the robot's memory when it points out its hard drive is proof also. The main issue left is the real precious stones, and when the robot communicates worry about how unpredictably Frank is behaving, it gives him a thought. He gets into bed and settles on the robot decision Hunter to let him know he's dying. At the point when Hunter stays with him, he misrepresents a few phony side effects and gives him a genuine discourse admitting he's been a missing father and thanking him for everything he's finished him. When he has Hunter eating out of his palm, he gives an attaché and requests that he conceal it, which Hunter possibly acknowledges to do when Frank notices he needs to go out clean. Tracker places the portfolio in the storage compartment of his vehicle, however when he's going to leave, he's come by Jake, Rowlings, and his men, who open the storage compartment and uncover the items clinched just to find the trinkets from the Excellence shop. Jake says this ought to, as of now, consider reasonable justification, so they go into the house to look through it, which Frank permits them to do on the grounds that he's certain they won't find anything. Realizing he's been controlled, Hunter flies off the handle at Frank and says not having been raised by him is something to be thankful for, all things considered. The police can't find the precious stones, so Jake says they ought to actually take a look at the robot's memory. Frank attempts to stop them, yet the men will not tune in. Fortunately for Frank, however, the robot recollects the stunt his proprietor showed him, and when the men draw nearer, he professes to initialize his fall to pieces program. Everybody runs outside aside from Hunter, who knows it's completely false, so Frank takes the risk to sneak around the house and get in his vehicle, which he hasn't driven in quite a while. Subsequent to picking up the robot through the indirect access, he drives to the town, ignoring his friend's solicitation to erase his memory. They show up at the library, and the robot picks the lock so they can get in and see Jennifer, who Frank apologizes to and concedes having taken the Don Quixote. He needs to educate her additional concerning his life, however he unexpectedly gets occupied when he sees a few pictures on the divider and has a shocking acknowledgement. Jennifer is his ex and mother of his kids, but since of his memory issues, he didn't perceive her after he was liberated from prison, since she looks more established. This is a lot for him to take, so subsequent to kissing her, he leaves the library and gets back, where Hunter and the police are as yet waiting for him. He and the robot rush inside and lock the entryway behind him before Frank begins trying to make a new arrangement to get away. Yet again the robot attempts to convince him that deleting its memory is the most ideal choice, since then things can return to ordinary and Frank can design his next work. As the robot begins repeating all the way of thinking behind thievery Frank showed it, he understands how far he's gone with this fixation of his, lastly grapples with what he needs to do. The robot opens a compartment on its back and Frank presses the button inside it, really deleting every one of the recollections in its hard drive. In a little while, Frank is living in a nursing home where Jennifer, Madison, and Hunter visit him frequently. At some point, in the wake of having lunch together as a family, he slips a little piece of paper in Hunter's grasp with a note that suggests the jewels have been concealed under the tomatoes in the nursery the robot had begun.